Let's see. First of all, I want to tell you that if you go to YouTube and you're looking for your videos, even if you have a link to it, it's gonna look like this now. One of the things that happened this week is I learned how to make thumbnails on YouTube, and all of the Friday sessions look like this. It was too confusing. You couldn't tell by the titles were long, and you couldn't tell Thursday class from Friday. So all the Friday ones look like this. They're a green background with white writing. The Thursday classes are white background with green writing. So you guys get to say go green, and they get to say go white. And I get to feel funny and charming for a second with that. But this is what you're looking for now if you're going to look for the videos. And feel free to send those to anyone that you think might be helped by them. And I also want to just again, I know, Nikki, I still need to get back with you. If you're out there, just know I'll get back to you. Just my week got away from me, but Nikki's done a video and Lindsay's done another video too, and really appreciate that. Just an ongoing, hey, thank you. A couple other people that I just really wanted to take a minute to thank today. The first is, funny that I'm going to say that, but my clicker just stopped working. And that my daughter Aiden, who has been helping me learn things about YouTube, including thumbnails, including how to make a playlist so videos flow, just all kinds of help with PowerPoint and YouTube. And I really appreciate her willingness to just jump in and help her mom. I also want to thank Karen Pace, who is also my wife, who you may have heard a time or two. On one episode, I thought we could, if we did such a thing as play a drinking game, we could probably take a drink every time you hear me say my wife. She's involved in my life and in my teaching, and she's on the call today. And I just have an incredible amount of gratitude for her and the way that she makes me better at everything I do, including all the help from this idea I had, like, should I do something? Would people come? Is this the right time? Can people learn these skills in a moment, in a pandemic moment? Like, do they have other things on their mind? And she just always really encourages me to show up and offer what's uniquely mine to offer. So I thank her for all her time and her attention to this process, including the text I got just a minute ago that said, have a good last session. So thank you. And also, I just really, Megan didn't have to do this. It wasn't part of her job. She just knows about this teaching, and she just got inspired to help. And she's put an exorbitant amount of time, week in, week out, trying to help me get ready and helping me learn Zoom platform and working through every PowerPoint. And I just really, really appreciate the partnership and the teamwork and the collaboration. And I did tell her that she could not argue with me about the slide, and she agreed. So I was very excited about that. We're going to start for a minute just going ahead and settling into the state of mind that best supports our learning. Just do a quick check around to see if there's anything you can do about your external environment, any last minute change you want to make, because I really just want you to settle in and just be here just for a little while today, just to be here. And to be completely honest, I made up the name of this reset skill today. I just want us to take a minute and to get really good at noticing our rushing, noticing running around. There's a song that says something about, putting our toes in the sand till our souls catch up, right? Like we're going too fast, we're too busy, we're too much in motion. I was, at Costco and running here and doing this, and I just want to come home to myself right now. Like right now, I want to just notice my breathing. When I did this a few minutes ago, right before I came on video, noticed my heart was racing. It was excitement and energy. It wasn't a negative thing, but it just was just fast. I was like, whew. So just would like you to close your eyes if that helps, or look out at something beautiful if that helps, or the candle's always here for us. And just begin to notice your breathing. And maybe as you exhale next time, exhale a little longer, a little more fully. We don't inhale enough, and we don't exhale. We don't exhale enough is what I meant to say, which means there's not enough room for new air. So Every time, just a few more seconds of exhale will help you reset your system. So exhaling is part of coming home. So just right now, notice your breathing. Notice your exhale. Notice your physical energy. Notice it's starting to slow down. Invite yourself to come home to who you were before you got busy-minded today, to who you are at core, to who you are in your default setting. I want you to give yourself permission to come home right now, to let everything else be whatever it is, and just to come home right now to that quiet, steady place inside. That I've heard when the ocean's, even a hurricane at the top of the ocean, at the bottom of the ocean, it's quiet and still. And I like to think about that when I'm having a mental hurricane, that there's a deeper, broader, vaster part of me that's quiet, that can hold me if I let myself come home to it, this energy. I don't know if you felt you drop, but I felt me drop a little deeper into my body a little deeper into the chair, into the groundedness. Okay. Here's what I heard from folks as we looked through all the chat and the survey. So I'm going to move the screen over here. That people really appreciated this. These are the themes. More than one person said these kinds of things. So people really feeling like it's okay to react. Even if it's not okay to react, you're going to react. But that the emphasis just be on okay, but then let's just circle back around. One of the coffee cups I threatened to make for people would say, so what, comma, now what, question mark. Okay, so what? So I lost my cool. Okay, now what? What can I do about it? How can I fix it? What do I need to hold myself accountable for? So people appreciated that. And Meg and I were just talking, and she was telling me how she really, really appreciates remembering that it's okay to have after the fact learning, because it's still learning, you're still growing. And today's conversation is really about how to have that after the fact learning mean more to you, because after the fact learning is more helpful when you don't shame yourself for whatever came before then. Holding yourself accountable, that's cool, but shaming and screaming at yourself for that, not cool. Lots of folks made comments about that one of the things that was helpful was that putting the space between your circumstance and your response, even knowing that there could be a space between, because we just get taught to go so fast, but that we could put a space between what's happening and our response to it. A pause, a moment to pause and reflect. That what we want to do in many, many situations is put more space between something happening and me feeling compelled to have a response. We can take our time with our response. Some would say that's being thoughtful or mindful. And so we don't have to go so fast. And it's really important to know there's a space, that the circumstance isn't causing your response, and to make the space bigger, particularly if you're having a hard time. And I know we were talking about this on the Thursday webinar yesterday, and somebody was saying, well, what do you do if somebody won't give you space? And I just really believe that we need to claim as much space as we need to be able to have ourselves have some better ideas and to really be able to hear your wisdom about what's going on. One person talked about really appreciating the index card thing, and it took me a while to figure out what was that? What were they talking about? It wasn't until I was watching the video that they were kind of talking about this idea that if this pad of paper represents some thought that I'm having, that when it's out here, it's still in my mind, but it's not blocking my view of anything. But when I'm fused with it, and I'm actively, it's not just flat, I'm actively like believing it, that it takes over everything. It seems like it's the only thing. And so just to be able to notice that, that's giving yourself the space, right? It's so even if you don't give yourself space right away and you make up a thing, this is the after fact learning, is that I can give myself some space. So I think of it like a trombone slide, and sometimes an imposter thought, like people talk about it like it's imposter syndrome. I kind of think of it now like I have flashes of feeling like an imposter because I have imposter thoughts, like, who the heck do you think you are doing a webinar for 500 people during this time? And then when I have those thoughts and they're really close, I feel shame, I feel insecurity. But being able to keep those thoughts farther back at bay allow me to go ahead and be brave and do things, and not to like fall prey to those thoughts. So I love that somebody saw that they could get some distance. And what's cool about that is that I don't have to make myself not have the thoughts. That is exhausting. It's exhausting to think that I have to try to eradicate every fear-based, unhelpful thought I have about myself, or that I have to forever disbelieve things that I've believed about myself that were not helpful, that I have to like not believe them once and for all. No, they can come back, and they will. And I'll have moments where I'm feeling it again. But if I remember to have that distance, I can help myself. And today's conversation is like, can we just like help ourselves get some distance? That's like a very important thing. Quite a few of you really sort of trying on this idea of like, wait, I should have values and be intentional about lining up with them. And I know that might sound funny to somebody who's been value guided and like had a lot of conversations, but I don't think that there's enough good conversations about who we want to be and how we want to conduct ourselves, and what I want to use my creative energy for, and what do I want my life to be about. And I know that some of you were not satisfied enough with the lantern exercise, so I'm going to try before the follow-up email this week to find a couple other books and different things that you can do to do some values reflection work, because it really does help you feel like you've set your compass and you've got your bearings and you can find your way when you're lost. It doesn't mean you won't get lost. It means when you're lost, or when something throws you off course, like a pandemic, you can find your way by that sense of orientation. And a lot of people talking about feeling patient, like liking that I go back before we go forward. Someone said that they felt like that was just respecting that people are at different places. And I do. And I also really respect that none of you, myself included, are ever going to be done learning what we could learn to make this deeper in ourselves. So I do have a great deal of patience with people when they're learning this. And I also want people to be actively learning this over time. So there's a blend there. And somebody else really wanting excited about today, looking for those last helpful tips and tricks before class ends. And this is where I would tell you that Megan and I have been having some conversation, and we've decided that we're going to have on Thursdays, a couple times a month through the summer, because we're not all back on campus yet, right? That we'll have more of a drop-in question and answer. Probably would be structured like I would say a couple things that I've been thinking about recently, and then really trying to ask some chats, do some polls, and find out what questions people are having about implementing this in their life. And the first one of those is going to be scheduled, if you want to mark your calendars for it. Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's Thursday, May 21st at 12:30.
You are correct.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not hearing any corrections, so I think I got that right. And we'll send you the Zoom link out and stuff like that. But so I just didn't want you to feel like I do think that having a touch point for people, and that'll be open to everybody from both cohorts, the Thursdays and the Fridays. And we'll just see, if people find them useful or helpful. So that's what we wanted to say about that. So here's my favorite comment of the week. just really captures what I was trying to get across too. That one thing that really hit home for me in session 5 was that our way of navigating each tough situation will not be perfect every time. 100% true. I had a moment the week prior where I was so worked up that I couldn't work through it with breath work or mindfulness. Me too. Had one of those. Something that really just like hijacks you, and you get all like, you just have like a prolonged seizure with something that you're upset with. It's going to happen. I don't think we'll ever be immune to that. We just want to have less of them, and we also want to have less of them over things that aren't significant. A lot of you get kinked up like that. That's that kinking up quality that we talked about the garden hose. And some of you are still getting kinked up about things that don't really matter, or that are gravity issues, meaning they are what they are, and you can't fix them and change them. So yes, you're going to have those. These tough moments are few and far between for this person. Yeah, great. And I was disappointed in myself that I couldn't breathe through it in the moment. And you can acknowledge the disappointment. It's okay to be bummed out about that for about like that long. And then beyond that, it's not helpful to the recovery, right? So the disappointment becomes, so you notice yourself having a thought and you start to try to relax out of it. And then the next thought is, I should be doing this better. And why can't I'm disappointed. Sometimes people tell me that they feel like they're a resilience failure, or like they just make up a really big, now you're shopping in that thought store and you're even farther. I call it the double whammy, like, cause I did a great job noticing that I was about to judge somebody, but now I'm judging myself for not being able to not do it in advance of doing it. Now I'm still not present. One time I figured that out when I realized in a session, I wasn't listening to my client, and then started to judge myself and beat myself up being a horrible therapist, which meant I still wasn't listening to my client because I was shopping in the I'm a bad therapist store. So instead of expecting yourself to be perfect in instead of expecting myself to be perfect in how I navigate situations every time, I now realize that I need to do the best I can and then do the next right thing. Yes, wow. It was like somebody just, actually that text was from somebody who I don't know who it was on my phone, because my clock says 1:22. I'm trying to stay oriented to time. And somebody just texted, I love this class, but I'm not sure who you were. So good, I'm glad. I love this life. I love living life like this. I used to be so hard on myself and so judgmental on myself. I was my own worst enemy. I got in my way every day. And I thought it was the circumstances. I had no idea I had anything to do with my hard, difficult time. And still often I'm the one in my way, but like in so much more perspective. And that's kind of what we want to kind of get at today. It's not a perfect, it's a practice. I love that. I've said it. It's my new mantra. It's not a perfect, it's a practice. I can't remember which one of you said that, but that was cool. Another thing that really landed for someone last week, and this is the kind of thing that's cool about lifelong learning, as I was thinking about this person's comment, which was they really appreciated when I said it in pairs: acknowledge and honor, release and relax, reflect and resolve. And as I was thinking about it, and based on something that happened in yesterday's class, a question I asked the class, I started seeing it differently yet again, because like now I had a new thought, right? And it's sort of like, okay, first of all, it's hard to even acknowledge when something's gone wrong, when we've had an unwanted personal experience. Even just that by itself can feel hard. But I think the reason why it's even hard to acknowledge is because we don't want to feel the feelings that would come naturally if we were to acknowledge that loss just happened. Like I was on a webinar yesterday and somebody said that they were going to lose somebody in the next few days. And I could tell they were like actively resisting the truth of that. And in that moment, I was like, I just said, you're going to lose somebody. You're telling me you're going to lose somebody in the next couple of days. And that is what it is what you're telling me. Yeah. And when you say that and you acknowledge it, the very next thing that comes is feelings. And so I thought of it, this is the way I haven't thought of it before. Like, what if that's the set? We have to acknowledge it is what it is. And then we kind of have to honor feel it, honor the feelings, feel it, then release and relax. So it was kind of new for me. I don't know if that feels new for you, but that my job, after I acknowledge that, I was denied vacation time and I really wanted to do something. So I'm going to acknowledge it, and then maybe I want to honor, release, and relax. Like, I could take my time with that, or maybe that could happen really fast. It depends on the situation. But, actively not wanting to feel the feeling is why we resist acknowledging it in the first place. And it doesn't let us get that flow and that movement through the cycle well enough. So I really want you to wonder about that. Like, and I think that people, well, I'm going to ask you that question in a minute, but and then absolutely, because that's dangerous right there, because you're acknowledging it and you're feeling the feelings and then releasing it, but maybe not actually making a change, setting a boundary, taking a risk that might actually help you be living your values. So sometimes, sure, I just need to acknowledge whatever happened and then honor, release, and relax, and then it really is kind of done. But when there's a pattern of behavior, something came up for me last night that I was noticing a pattern of behavior in a relationship, and I could have just been disappointed and then released and relaxed and gone on about my night. But I needed to reflect on what I really needed to say to this person, and then to communicate it, because I need to know that I've said what I needed to say about that situation. And that's kind of putting them all together. But I want you to kind of wonder about would it be easier to let yourself feel the feeling if you really trusted that you would then be able to release and relax? I think we don't feel the feeling because we feel like we're never going to be done feeling the feeling. And so it's interesting for me, I think, to have you think that way. And I wish I could see your faces, because I could see, and I would want to know kind of what you think about that. So I'm going to try to ask the chat question. What makes it hard for people to honor, release, and relax? Like, what do you think gets in the way? I may have said too much, but I think there's probably, that's great. Thank you. The person just told me who they were. Okay. Okay. Negative self-talk, other people. Okay, I'd like to know more about the other people part. If you could chat more about that. Myself, okay, you get that it's you. Anger, just like anger taking over. I tell myself I don't have time for this. And I love that this person then says, LOL, I don't have time. I tell myself I don't have time for this. You can kind of see how you don't have time. You don't have time to not do the 6-word framework, right? Because when you're just resisting or avoiding or denying or numbing, you're wasting time. If what you really want is value-guided action, come what may. Family culture, yeah, like the conditioning, the rules, family culture code for like the rules that I got that told me that feelings are a weakness in the first place. I'm really wanting you to see today that the opposite of that is true. That if you're a person that can actually make space for the feelings, you get to effective quicker. This idea that we're supposed to not feel is in the way of effectiveness. It's in a way of bravery and courage. It's a way of change. I like the new grouping. Somebody says, this is reflective of my process where I struggle. Moving between knowledge and honor is hard, and moving into the boundaries and resolving is challenging. Yeah. But we want to have that flow. Past behavior patterns in your autopilot responses. That's excellent. So you weren't born with those. Like, we weren't born with a judgmental habit. We weren't saying in the nursery, oh, that baby should be wearing Pampers instead of Huggies. Like, we weren't doing it. We learned those things, which means that they weren't our default settings. Somebody had to teach us. We aren't born hating people, and we aren't born separating from people. We do that in our own minds. Worrying about letting things go that need to be done. Yeah. Okay. You have no idea how long the feeling will last or how intense it will get. Yeah, we're scared. Like we're really like strong, very capable people, but in that moment we just get little because it feels big. And that's where this is a different kind of faith. This is a faith in your emotional resilience, a faith in your well-being. And you can absolutely connect that to whatever else you feel connected to, a power greater than yourself, a spiritual energy, like whatever works for you about that. So it is actually a moment of like releasing fear and trusting that if you have the process and you let yourself feel it, just like you let yourself come home, hopefully when we were settling in today. When people first started telling me that, I did not believe them. I thought they were a little bit, out there. But I have come to believe, which is actually the second step in a 12-step program, is came to believe that a power greater than myself, right? I have come to believe that I can trust that if I let myself feel the feelings that a healthy human would feel when something like that happens, whatever that is, if I trust myself to feel it, and I also trust that I'll recover from the feeling, just like I'm starting to trust that when I walk really fast, or dare I say even run sometimes, and my heart rate gets up, I'm trusting that my recovery rate is good and improving, right? And similarly, it's okay to feel big because you're going to come back to balance. I love that. You're noticing that. Anger. The fear of what's going to happen next, the unknown, right? And so if you trust that and you do this process, what I would want this person to know is what you can start, the known is that your value-guided self is going to help you. That doesn't mean you get to know the outcome of the situation, but what if we stopped measuring success of a situation with the outcome, what the other person's going to think, or whether or not the proposal is going to work out, or whether or not you're going to get accepted into the program. And what if we started to measure our success based on, I showed up in a value-guided way? And that shifts so much. It also would work, the concern about not being willing to do this because you're fearing the retribution. Well, if somebody didn't like it, and even if there was a consequence to your value-guided behavior, then you can also trust yourself to navigate whatever the consequence was. So it starts to take the fear out of the retribution. And my most trusted other might be going out there, wow, did you hear yourself? Because sometimes I can get where I'm afraid to do something because I'm afraid I might get fired, which is kind of often a made up thing in my head. And when I do that the best, like even doing this webinar, like I'm going to do it because it's the value guided thing to do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to use my voice because it's the value guide. I'm going to speak out about that injustice because it's the value guided thing to do. And then if there's a consequence, I'll navigate that too. So this is actually starting, like, the more you practice this, the more faith you'll have in the practice of this. And I've never, to the person who says, I feel like the overwhelming feeling will never stop, so it's hard to acknowledge. I have to tell you, in all of my years of counseling, been a social worker for 31 years, and all of that time, I've never known someone to start feeling something and never stop. Like, that's just not how we operate. Even when I've been like imagine this, you go to a tearjerker movie and you're all like, but by the time you get out to the car and by the time you get home, that's shifted. Particularly if we're holding our emotions in a more open way, they'll come and they'll be big, and they'll give you the message they want, and then they'll dissipate. But we have to actually brave trying that on before we get to find out the truth of it. It's kind of like if you want to go swimming, and this happened to me, like I wanted to jump off the high dive, but I wasn't sure I would be okay if I jumped off the high dive. And that's the kind of thing that you don't get to know it's okay until you do it. It's in the doing of it that you start to get the practice. Getting lost in it, cycling back to thoughts about the hard thing, too much noise in your brain, too many thoughts. So for that person, if you're feeling the noise in your brain, if you can see that you've got noise in your brain, you want to do a reset practice and then ask yourself, what is it that I need to acknowledge? And one of the examples I shared about the morning that my son's ankle was hurt and I had to cancel clients. It was just too noisy. It wasn't until I let myself go get my tea. And in that moment, I said, is there something you're resisting? Yes. What is it? Which is, by the way, one of the questions I ask myself when I want to try to acknowledge what's actually happening. Is there something here you're not liking? Is there something here you're recoiling against? What is it exactly that you're muttering about? And that can kind of start. So everything being rapid is just a messed up cultural message that we have to go that fast. There's very few things that you have to go fast about. And actually, there's very few things that fast is better about. So I just want you to be trying that on. So sometimes I wonder, So, just keep wondering if you're not letting the honoring happen enough, if you're short-circuiting it. And also sometimes when you start to like make space for it, they pass more quickly. This is one of the things, the more I resist an emotion, the longer it's around. And so sometimes when you actually turn towards it and you embrace it, it passes through. And so sometimes, you're doing it just right. And that would be it. So I see some of you are seeing that self-judgment and negative self-talk are really a big part of the problem. And sometimes you're trying to focus and not wanting to deal with other situation at hand. Yeah. So sometimes it doesn't feel like it's the right time. And sometimes it's not the right time. But I still would want you to like make note that that's something I probably want to sit with a little bit later today when I have a minute. So, okay. All right, I'm going to stop there because I know that we've got miles and miles to go. So I can get my computer to work with me here. Okay. Some of the thoughts that I had about, just one moment. Not wanting to feel difficult emotions, feeling hijacked by the physiology of the emotion, like physiologically just having to like let that resolve itself first, which if that's the case, then we have to actually be there for ourselves when we're trying to do that. That you have rules and thoughts about what it means to release. You don't want to give up control, that not trusting the outcome, and that they don't honor and release because very often they're not conditioned to relax. Those are connected. So the more you get used to this, the easier it's going to be for you to go from tight to relaxed, because you're going to have a pathway created for you to go from resistance, upset, fear of feeling that emotion to like, I know what to do. I know that dance move, if you will. I just made that up. Okay. So I just want to link this to grief, because grief is a thing. It's always a thing. It's a thing. We don't get to go through life without it. And right now, grief, is multi-layered and complex. And there's a lot of us grieving, and there will be people grieving different things all at the same time. So just things like to bring grief into this conversation makes sense. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her collaborator David Kessler originally came up with 5 stages of grief. Dr. Kubler-Ross has passed. David Kessler recently added a 6th stage, which is hope or meaning, to that, which kind of fits with what I've been talking about for quite a while about grief. These 5 stages of grief, for me, are very connected to the 6-word framework. The 5 stages of grief are not to be thought of as like a sequential, you get one done and you go to the next. You kind of bounce back and forth. And particularly in the first 3, people bounce back and forth and around in them. And I got curious about that a while back and had an insight related to acceptance and commitment theory, the psychological flexibility model, and how it might apply to grief. And so back in 2011, I made this diagram. I actually see it as 3 stages, and I would change a couple things. I always feel like I'm going to get struck by lightning if I say that Dr. Kubler-Ross might have gotten a piece of this wrong. I understand why she said this, so shock, anger, and bargaining, for me, they're all different versions of resistance. They're different ways a person can resist. I've actually added a few more in my first category of resistance. That magical thinking, the what ifs, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. It's trying to make the loss not be occurring. All the ways a person could do that would fit into that category. And then in her next stage is depression, which I think is confusing for people because grief and depression, they can coexist. But they often grief gets confused as depression. And the message around depression and the stigma around depression also then gets transferred over onto grief as well. And things happen like my mom was given antidepressant medication 2 weeks after my dad died. And it's this idea that we're not supposed to feel pain and that there's something clinically not okay about pain. And I would say there's something clinically beautiful about pain because it's our humanity. It's an expression of our humanity. I mean, my mom did not need to cap those emotions off. She needed to let herself feel them. And because she got messages and struggled and controlled those and resisted it and then got messages that she should medicate it, she had unresolved grief for a really long time because she didn't acknowledge and honor and release. She didn't have that process. So the acceptance part, for me, I think after you drop out of resistance, release is the line between resistance and acceptance. And because people are like, what am I releasing into? You're releasing into acceptance and acceptance is messy. And this is what a lot of you, like, if I release and accept that, and I let myself accept the loss has occurred, and I feel the feelings that are natural to feel given that the loss happened, I'm never going to come out of that. And I wish I could make this motion, because I would want the acceptance stage to be kind of fluid or transparent, because you're actually wanting to fall through the messy. Brene calls it the messy middle. Brene Brown calls it the messy middle. You're in the messy middle. That means you've accepted something and you're feeling it and you're trying to find your way. If we can't just bypass that. So I would want you to see that when you drop your resistance, you fall into that messy, but then you fall through into what I have been calling for a long time, healing and recovery. And in those places, it's all of the reflective questions. So you've released it, then I like this. Like, you could say the words differently, because I just made those words up, those 6 words, right? They just how they made sense to me. And I have people tell me sometimes they should all be ours, and they should all this, and they should all that. And I'm like, get your own words. But I'm also open to this. And so last night I was thinking, feel, release, reflect, resolve might be a shortcut for some folks. Because especially if we just aren't letting ourselves feel. There's no feeling that we have to be scared of. They come, they express, and they move on. So in the healing and recovery, it's really about what do I want to make of my life now that this occurred? And I have had a lot of grief, and I've had a lot of suffering, and I likely will have more. I can't imagine. I won't. But I just don't feel like we should have to suffer without transformation, without it helping us metamorphosize into something greater. And by the greater, I don't mean like shiny, super shiny greater. I mean like more meaningful, a deeper, heartfelt, wholehearted. I don't want to stop being able to be wholehearted because I have loss. And the more I understand that, the more I get to just be authentic in the first place. So just in case you're not sick of the 6 words yet, let's just keep going, as I want to just link them to the psychological flexibility measure that we talked about last week and the 6 skills from acceptance commitment theory. They're linked together. You have to have a witness to be able to notice what it is that you should acknowledge. And expansion is just really physiologically making space for yourself to have an experience and allow would be another word we could use there, the emotions to occur, to like let it be messy. All the connection exercises that you would get if you watched video, the fifth video of that series, is just different ways to bring all of the basic reset skills are all connection practices. I could connect fully, and I think I will, with my Diet Pepsi. This is not product placement. I wish it was, because that would probably bring some money. But I am going to connect with this for a minute. I actually feel the bubbles and caramel coloring and probably things that aren't great for me. Connect with my breath. So that's where that fits in. The values, really asking yourself in a variety of ways, what kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be in our community as we're going through this stay-at-home time? How do I want to show up as a coworker in the Zoom world? Those kinds of questions. So again, I'll give you some more things to maybe do some values homework on. And the value-guided committed behavior and the ability to resolve over time, sometimes that can be the trick. I think in my past, there'd be like, I was clear about who I wanted to be, but I wasn't always being that person. And I think the major stumbling block, again, to taking the committed action over time is that we're too hard on ourselves and we're too afraid of the outcome. So I just want to talk a little bit about those things as we kind of round out the class today. Living lined up with your values is, ask yourself the question, how do I want to show up and be seen and live brave in this difficult time? This is important. What permissions do I need to give myself to begin showing up in this way? Because, I can't show up and do a webinar that might reach a bunch of people if I'm not willing to make mistakes. So I have to give myself permission to be a new Zoom webinar learner, and I need to give myself permission to be scattered and not have it all be perfect. I better give myself permission to be humble about it along the way. And humility might be, simplicity might be a value that guided this. Humility might be a value that guided this. Those kinds of things. It requires humble learning over time. When you recognize that you're out of alignment, you'll get back in alignment quicker if you're kind. So it's you be kind and then begin again, right? Like sometimes when we're harsh and critical and we yell at ourselves and we get all lathered up in self-abusive ways, we don't get back to the business for another weekday or, month or 6 months. Like we want to be kind, simply begin again. Kind of like the rumble strips on the highway. I want to hear them. And then I want to come back over and over. You will need a group of people. It doesn't have to be big, but there needs to be people who get what you're trying to do and who are on your side. Karen is, the head cheerleader of my support section. I have the fortune of having built and created a circle of people that are there when I'm having a hard time that I can turn to. These need to be people who have earned the right to hear your whole story because they're trustworthy and sacred and safe people. They also need to be people that can bear the weight, like that they have some bearings, like they can show up for you and they can take the load sometimes when it's hard. And if you're someone that doesn't feel like you have that right now in your life, then we want to be thinking about how can we, sometimes we don't have those folks in our lives because we've been afraid to kind of reach out and start to establish them. In one of Brene Brown's curriculum, she talks about which comes first, vulnerability or trust. It's a tricky question. Right? She says it's a chicken and egg question because if I'm not vulnerable and give and tell people that I need something, then they don't have the opportunity to show up for me, which is what tells me that they're reliable. And so my need, they're showing up, me showing up, their needs, they ask me, and that's kind of how we end up with a support section. And so if we're keeping ourselves really safe, then we're in our way of that support section. We're of the development of that support section. If there's a particular area that you really want to start showing up in that maybe you haven't been who you've wanted to be in that, I think it's really helpful to get an integrity partner, somebody that you can check in with. I have an integrity partner related to some of my work. When I really mess something up, when I act out of alignment and I'm feeling shame because I did something stupid with a coworker or a client or a customer, this is a person I will text right away. One time I texted and I just said, oh, I just did this. I'm just so not happy. I just did this thing. It wasn't cool. And her first response was, we all stumble sometimes. You know, even you, like, it's okay. Catch your breath and call me. And then I did. And then it's like, okay, that sucked. That wasn't cool. What do you want to do about it? And then I made a plan. And then there'll be times where I'll like text her and say, okay, I'm going to go do this thing and I'll see you on the other side. And then I'll text her back and tell her how it went. And sometimes it went great. And I can say, oh, I'm so proud. That went great. And sometimes it's like, oof, that person was, but there was a very big cardinal that just landed right in front of my face. So my ADD had to tell you all that. Sometimes I show up in a beautiful way and I wholeheartedly put a boundary out there and I say it beautifully and the other person armors up and smacks at it. And it's, ow. I go back to my integrity partner so that if I have a face down in the arena moment, there's some support structure to help me get up. And because living lined up with your values is not always easy. It is the incomparable Karen Pace that told me once a long time ago when I was trying to figure out if I should leave a relationship or not. She said, well, wisdom isn't always easy, but it's always wise. And then she kind of walked away and I was like, dang, right? So it's not going to be easy. And it does take Spartan will. And we do need to show up in a way that has authenticity and courage. And those might be some of your values. So let's just speak for a minute on this piece. I lost track on time. We're doing good on time. This is a part that I just want to sort of brainstorm. And this is a little bit of a risk. I usually do this in person with folks, but we're going to try to do it the best we can. So I think we all deserve to have healthy supervisors, mentors, and coaches. I'm an advocate of that. I think trying to help leaders be healthier supervisors, mentors, and coaches is a passion of mine. I'm very committed to that in the university context. I think that's a prerequisite to us getting where we need to go as an institution. There has been too much pain caused by people who were harmful in those ways. So I do believe we all need and deserve healthy supervisors, mentors, and coaches. Not sure we even know what the difference is, because I don't know about you, but I've been in a relationship that I thought was love, but it really wasn't love, because I didn't have a clear distinction between what was healthy and what wasn't healthy. And I needed help getting clear about the contrast between love and not love, so that I could, choose love. And in similar ways, we need to know the difference between healthy and unhealthy. So I would like you to, I'm going to open my chat, and I would like you to answer some questions for me. And all the chats there. So, okay. So what was I doing? So, if you were to just think about for a minute and just describe what healthy supervision, coaching, or mentoring looks like, just how would you describe? I just want to see it: knowledgeable, coaching, caring, proactive but not invasive, clear boundaries, appreciation, supportive, listening, emotionally intelligent. Wow, a lot of those came all at the same time. Emotionally intelligent. Supportive, listening, approachable, non-judgmental, understanding, accountability without shaming. Yeah, that's a big, big piece of it. I usually have to prompt that question, so I love that it's there already. Yeah, because I say, like, when these folks, when you make a mistake, how does a healthy supervisor or coach show up? Respectful, helping people flourish, asking questions, invested in personal development, empathic, appreciative, empathic, Empathic, we need to know what that means, right? Like that's just a word that gets thrown around. What does that actually do? Actions with integrity, acts with integrity, yeah. Not condescending. They're a safe zone. They direct through compassionate comments or consideration, mutual respect. Constructive criticism, never asking you to do work that they're not willing to do. Engaged, connected, trusting, and thankful for your abilities. They're psychologically safe and supportive and motivating. Yeah, psychologically safe is so critical, that they're not armored up. They don't weaponize and bring stuff against you. When you make a mistake, how do they show up? Healthy, caring, respectful, listening, asking what I want, trying to help you get what you need done is a beautiful hallmark of healthy supervision. When you make a mistake or drop a ball, do they hold you accountable? And if so, how? This is what I'm trying to get at. Respectful, kind, supportive, trustworthy. So it's not like they don't show up, and it's not like they just let you get away with anything. They're humble when they're in error, not judgmental, thought-provoking. Thought-provoking, and they want to increase perspective. And they move away from the emotion, like, well, that maybe heartfelt emotion, but they don't bring you negative emotion. They don't, right? Nurturing, pushing you to be your best self, approachable. Okay. Help you resolve issues, and then ask what lessons you've learned. Yeah, they're about like growth. They're about helping you become. They're about lifting you up and holding you accountable. Expects me to be healthy. I hear you. Someone said mentors and coaches. That's one thing. I think expecting my supervisors to be healthy might be a bridge too far. I think that the university community has some brilliant supervisors, really, really wise and healthy supervisors. And then there's some supervisors that are less that. And so don't give up hope that you can have a supervisor to help you. They don't shame you for mistakes you've made, but help you focus on how to move forward productively. Remember that. They don't shame you for the mistakes you've made, but they help you move forward productively and help you learn from them. Have some self-awareness of their own. They are aware of their own reactivity, and hopefully they're doing the 6-word reset, and they're like witnessing themselves, and they're not coming off at you when they're not centered. So that's great. Okay, that's pretty good description of healthy. Let's go the other way, which I usually do this the other way, and do unhealthy first. But describe unhealthy. When somebody is a supervisor, mentoring and coaching, and just because mentors and coaches are supposed to be these volunteer things, they don't actually. I love that someone said their supervisors, all those healthy things. That's what I'm saying. There's a range, and people have a choice. If there's a space for them, if there's a space between the circumstance and their response, they have a chance to be the supervisor they want to be. If they're moving fast and they're under pressure, and there's a power over dynamic on top of it, then they're likely to bring you what's not healthy first and too fast. So, I'm going to actually, you guys have a great list of the healthy ones in here. I'm going to actually make a handout for you so that we can list that out. And then I went back to, okay, here we go. All right, so the unhealthy, shaming, manipulative, I think maybe somebody else's supervisors on here, blaming, takes no responsibility for their own actions, blames, shames, judges, criticizes, belittles, makes you feel like a child, like it's got this look to it, right? It's scary, not allowing you to make mistakes, not so healthy. Micromanagers, really putting the screws to you is the phrase. I don't even know where that, I have to check that phrase. I don't know where that comes from. Hotheads, narrow-minded, in it for themselves, not supportive, pointing out mistakes, always focused on the problems, narcissistic, condescending, belittling, bullying at every opportunity, cutting you off in conversations, not giving you a chance to say what was really going on for you, condescending, doesn't take time to listen, belittling. So this supervisor is, someone's saying the supervisor is really laid back and even and tells us when she made a mistake. That's great. Good for you. That's a better thing. Not kind. We're just talking about unhealthy right now. Unconstructively critical. Let's remember that phrase. That's a great phrase. Unconstructively critical. be critical and help me grow and help me learn and help me get better at what I do. That's great. But unconstructively critical, that's got a feeling to it. No contact, no support. They blame you, cold shoulder. Okay, so here's the thing. Do unhelpful supervisors, when you make a mistake, how do they show up? Sometimes people say they don't. They're not even engaged. They're absent. They just don't give you any feedback. Keeps yanking the football away from Charlie Brown. Yeah, a little bit of Lucy's character in that, where like you think that this time they're going to give you what they need, and then they pull it away at the last minute, and then you feel bad about yourself. Put you down in front of let's remember that one. Put you down in front of other people. Doesn't allow rest and reprieve. Oh, harsh, on it. Go, 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 go. Takes credit for something you did. Putting you in your place so you know who's boss. I'll show you. Passive-aggressive micromanagers, belittling, too much pressure. You might be having a physiological feeling as I described this, because that's how the thought cycle works, right? Like now we're talking about this and you're remembering experiences you've had with people who aren't helpful. Abuse of power and unaware of the dynamics of race, gender, and the impact of other differences. Absolutely. Using their way, their bias, and their power over you, and not allowing space for your way of looking at it. Telling you how you should feel, does not follow through, unplanned resolutions, aggressive, egotistical and divisive, manipulative, lack of contact, not being present at all, not asking how things are going, absent, I won't say sorry, uses fear to encourage performance, scare the crap out of you, or try to get, they lead by startle response, right? They try to get that, okay? Pits team members against one another, right fighters, have a great supervisor, okay, but tummy turning over memories. Yeah, that's all right. If I just brought that up, just take a minute. Just that's not happening to you right now. We're just talking about a concept. Okay, so do you feel like you've got the continuum, kind of what it looks like with healthy and what it looks like not healthy? So I want you to imagine that I just handed you an index card, and on the index card, I want you to write the name of somebody that was a supervisor for you somewhere in your lifetime. I for some reason, I always pick my high school volleyball coach, and I could write her name on it. And if you asked me to, I could walk up to a wall where it had these healthy ideas and this unhealthy idea, and I know exactly where I would put her. I would put her slightly to the unhealthy side of center. Like she did some things pretty helpful, but some things not so helpful to me, which is actually why I stopped that activity. So can you name somebody and can you put them there on the wall? Okay, so we can describe it and we can see when somebody's this or somebody's that. Okay, so I would like you to turn your card over in your mind, just, and I would like you to write your own name on it. And then in relationship to how you supervise, coach, or mentor yourself, the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake, the way you hold yourself accountable. Do you talk to yourself in a way that is that growth-oriented, learn from mistakes, let me help you up, let me believe in you, let me kind of guide your next action, let me be patient, let me be kind, let me know that this mistake doesn't define you, let me know and see how hard you're trying. Is it that model, or is it this more yelling, critical, dismissive, power over feeling, shaming, belittling? And this is a super, super important question for you to be thinking about here, because it is the thing that makes resilience hard, is when we're trying to navigate, if we have the quality of the supervisor in our head. And I will tell you, I have had some really, really toxic supervisors and coaches and mentors in my lifetime, and partners for that matter. With the exception of maybe one or two, I haven't had very many that were more toxic than I've been to myself. I had to take a breath when I said that. Yeah, someone said, I've heard you use this example, this exercise in a group before, and both times I'm just like, oof, right? Yeah, there's usually an audible groan. First time I did it, there were about 100 people in the room, and it was, you could feel it, like the vast majority of people. Where would you place them on the continuum, and where do you place you on the continuum? Oh boy. Megan, can you, I didn't do the poll page. Can you pull the poll up? I'll just leave this really not complete, not very perfect poll.
It is the first one is up. So asking, I am more often an unhealthy supervisor, coach, or mentor to myself.
Thank you. Whoops.
You're all good.
Well, I think I'll just be a good supervisor to myself at the moment. I fixed all the other ones, but I forgot this one. If you're done with your poll, or I'm done with my poll and still waiting behaviors, to just take some breaths. Notice something comforting in your environment. Let your mind and heart connect with something that's going to happen in your day that's very beautiful and meaningful. Just allow yourself that moment.
I'm going to close the poll in about 3 seconds. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share those results. About 51% yes, 35% no, and about 14% not really sure.
All right. Go ahead and do the next poll. And curious about that one too. Yeah, not sure. Like that means like we haven't been noticing, right? And so, you know, for those 14% of the people, I really want you to start getting curious, because if you're shaming and belittling and being harsh and judgmental with yourself, and you're not showing up, like, are you trustworthy? Are you like if that person, that voice, if it were to embody itself into a person outside of you, would you even want to be around it? It absolutely translates. Someone's saying it translates into parenting styles too. Yeah.
And while you talk about that, well, she talks about parenting styles, Lisa. Will you share a little bit about the story you used earlier with the crumpled paper? Talk about,
okay.
I think that really applies to both our own self-compassion and what it means for others.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that earlier. Earlier when I was talking about, you know, the after the fact learning, it is a both. There's a both and in there, because I do want to be patient with myself, and I can only know what I know when I know it, and I'm not going to be perfect, and I'm going to mess stuff up. And when I mess up, it's helpful to just like acknowledge that and come back and try to do better, like that one comment said. We do want to pair that next to, if it's emotional dysregulation that's happening, if when I get off center and reactive, I'm being an unhelpful supervisor to someone else, or I'm yelling or shaming a kid, or I'm just way too intense, there is a cost to the person. And I was telling Megan, when I was talking about learning from people that you're trying to teach, there was a kid that was trying to tell his mom, who always like she would, just like my mom actually, like my mom would get brittle and tired and exhausted and go off on me. And if she knew, she did circle back around, and she would come in and apologize and say, I didn't mean to do that. And that was helpful. And yet sometimes people will apologize, but then not change the behavior. And so I think we have to put it together, like after the fact learning, sure, yes, let's embrace that and not be perfect. And then next to that, we want to put, you know, a really strong commitment to not go off on people. And so this kid was trying to say to his mom that, yeah, he knows she apologized, but it's not enough, is what he was kind of trying to say. And so he asked me for a piece of paper, and I gave him one. And he took it and he crumpled it up really tight. Sort of like energy, like he had like a mad face. I wondered, like, is that his mom's mad face? And then he goes like this, and he goes, and then he flattened it out, all nice. It was very, like, he went out of his way to be very, dramatic about that. And then he looked at us, and then he picked it up and he crumpled it up again, and then he flattened it out, and he just kept doing that. Didn't say anything, and his mom just had a look on her face, like I was feeling it too. And eventually the paper got frayed. And then he did this beautiful thing where he said to her, I know you don't mean it, and I still need you not to do it. Which I thought, wow, that's really, really powerful.
And I think that that's the same thing about self-care and self-compassion, that if we aren't happy with what our inner supervisor looks like, we continue to fray ourselves. And so we have to really, while we can correct, we have to also try and recognize it ahead of time. So I just think that it really has that quality of both and. So I'm going to go ahead and share your results for you.
Remind me what the questions were, because I don't have it in front of me.
When I make a mistake or act out of the alignment with my values, my unhealthy supervisor shows up first. 2% never, 33% occasionally, 34% frequently, 15% almost all the time, and 16% all the damn time.
All the time. So Megan are like, what, should I say that in there? And we're like, yeah, let's, because it just got to qual all the damn time. So, okay, so what I wanted to do with this is also just like, there's hope. Like, if you did it a lot, I mean, I did it all the damn time. Like, and it was absolutely directly correlated to my lack of resilience. And as I've become willing to hold I do not let myself off the hook. My daughter would, she just was talking to me about this last night. I don't let myself off the hook. I lost my train of thought. So when I'm harsh, when I was harsh and critical with myself, this is what would happen, right? I'll give you an example. The first time I saw this, the need to cultivate a healthier inner supervisor was when a number of years ago, I'm going to tell myself because some colleagues are on the call. A number of years ago, I did this thing where I agreed to go do a webinar for MSU Extension at 4:00 in the afternoon, and to do that, I had to move my 4:00 client someplace else. And I told the woman I would, if she was willing, and if she could just come at 5. Maybe 5:15. If she could meet me at 5:15, that I could still see her. I just needed to go do this thing that felt kind of important first. And she said, sure, that's no problem. I can do that. And so when I walked out of Ag Hall that day, with every intention to go back to the office, I was up in my head, and I just went home. I went to the parking ramp, I got in my car, and I went home. And I was home a little while when it occurred to me that I had let this person down. And oh my gosh, this is what I'm saying. Did the unhealthy one show up first? You betcha. I was horrified with myself. That is not an okay thing to do. It was particularly hard because the building we worked in locked at 5:00. So she wouldn't even have been able to get in to find out I wasn't there. I had this image of her walking around the building being frustrated, which, by the way, was what happened. And I wasn't supposed to go back in the building after I went back. And I was here, and I was like horrified and yelling at myself. And all of a sudden I felt it. And then I just took a breath, right? I just said, okay, you did this, right? And then I'm like, okay, what would a healthy supervisor say to me? What would somebody who really understands how hard I'm trying and how innocent the mistake was, and how would they want me to try to help me fix this? And this voice in my head, it was me. This voice said, go get her number and call her. And so I went back to the building and the custodians let me in, and I went to my desk and I got the number, and then I came home and I called, and she was apologizing, and the voice said, and apologize, like, and don't wait till tomorrow, do it now. It was very clear, do it now. And because you're going to have a better night if you do it, and you just need to resolve it, the sooner the better. So I went and made the call. I'm just having my memory come back fully to me. She was mad. I said, I'm really sorry. This is what happened. I said, I'd like to reschedule. She said, okay. But she was mad. And I looked at my calendar and I was pretty full. And I said, the one time I could do for sure is if you wanted to come in the morning, I could come early before work and I could see you then. And she's like, are you even going to show up? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to like really try my best to show up. I was humble about it. And so that's what we did. She met me in the morning. I saw her, and by 8:00 at my regular time of the day, I had seen the client, written the note, and had done the best I could with it. Right, which is really good because my external supervisor, the actual supervisor that I had, wrote me up for that. Right, and it was just part of a long, painful set of things. But I knew I made a mistake. I am human. And I responded to that mistake in the most value-guided way. And because of that, I got to come back and be at ease. I remember having a really nice connection with my girlfriend at the time, who is Karen, probably remembers this story because it was kind of big. And I didn't harm myself. And what would have happened before is I would have continued to yell at myself. I would have felt worse and worse. I would have called up my old friend, Little Debbie, the snack cake person, and I would have like hung out with a whole bunch of oatmeal cream pies while watching a whole bunch of Netflix. I would have stayed up too late. I probably would have called in sick the next day because I would have been wanting to avoid that ever even happened, and all of the things that would have been coming. And I would have been right because I had an unhealthy power over boss. So that's oppression. That's in the mix too. It wasn't just me, but also that reaction. But I got to bypass a lot of that, and I got to just take care of it in a way that felt right to me and ultimately was in best service to the client. And it was also kind of fun when I got written up and I could say, yes, I did that. And then this is what I did to resolve it. And that client's been seen in the notes in the file, right? It's the very best that we can do. So whether you're talking about this, like we have to show up for ourselves as trusted, loyal, healthy helpers. That's my main point. And we miss the mark profoundly. And if you're not even sure, if you haven't even witnessed it, if you don't know, then you don't even know if you're doing it. And if you start to notice and you notice you're doing it all the damn time, I can just tell you, I did too. And my commitment to learning the resilience skills, including mindful self-compassion, which is the practice that helped me start to dismantle my habit of shopping in the "you're a piece of shit" store at myself, right? And being so harsh. My wife would probably say to you still, there are moments when I'm too hard on myself. I'm not 100%, I am not in full remission of this upbringing because I grew up in a culture that is judgmental and critical and tells us that we're only okay if. And so I will continue to notice, release, come back home, and then ask my healthy inner supervisor, man, she rocks. And she never lets me down. And she, it's not that I don't make mistakes. It's that I try to navigate those mistakes wholeheartedly and value guided. And guess what? Then I get to like myself better over time, and I have less emotional baggage. So I really want you to, A, start to notice how are you talking to yourself, and B, when you start to hear yourself acting like a terrible, terrible helper, can you interrupt yourself right then? Can you bring yourself to the present moment? Do a 3-breath reset. And when you get to the reflection, the reflective question, in the reflective, the acknowledge, honor, acknowledge I made a mistake and I'm feeling horrible about it. I'm very shame triggered about it. I just have this yucky, gross emotion going on. Okay, are you willing to let it go? Yeah. And I can't make it go right away. Sometimes I have to go through the whole Kroger store before it dissipates, you know. But I'm seeking to let it go so that I can get to the reflection part that says, what would the healthiest supervisor on the planet want you to do about this? What would the person who really knows, you know, what your heart is, and would want to hold you lovingly accountable? Absolutely, I want you to hold yourself accountable. I think the people who have been most harmful in my life are people who were pathetically unable to hold themselves accountable for anything. I don't want to be that person. I don't want you to be that person. And I want to do that lovingly. I would want to hold you accountable in a loving way. I think we need to have accountability from our leaders in lovable, caring. When they talk about a community of care, it doesn't mean you don't hold me accountable. It means that we're compassionate as we try to navigate the fact that we're all human and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to bump into each other. We're going to have challenges across differences. And you know, when I make a mistake and say something that is offensive to somebody, if I have an unhealthy inner supervisor, my white fragility moments are really about me screaming at me because I said something inappropriate. If I had a healthy supervisor right there, they'd probably say, shut up, sister, and take this in and really try to hear what this person is trying to tell you so that you can grow because you actually want to be a healthier person across race. It isn't the person telling me that's causing the problem, it's the person in my head. Which is why I feel like this resilience, it's just one of the hundreds of reasons why I think this resilience training needs to be embedded with the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So, somebody just said the little Debbie reference makes them laugh every time. Okay, how do you cultivate a healthy inner supervisor? Because some of you are wondering that. You want to wake up and notice how you're treating yourself in the moment. You want to begin to consider the possibility that the story that you carry about yourself, isn't true and was brought to you by a whole bunch of critical, unhelpful voices, right? That like you thinking that's who you are, and then we kind of feel like we have to like scream that out of us, which doesn't make it go away. When we start to have empathy for ourselves, we start to see that we're the energy behind that. And then we get to craft from that energy, which is going to let us, even if we've messed up in relationships, we can have new starts. We can commit to a new start in the relationship with ourselves, just like we can commit to doing our parenting differently in the future than maybe we have when we realize that we've had a habit that hasn't been helpful. You realize and you gently self-correct, right? So you just, it's about really kind of like turning over a new leaf and having a new start, and then really noticing the unhelpful one, and then just asking that one to step aside so that you might hear what a healthier supervisor. Because I don't know about you, but some of my unhealthy inner supervisor mirrors the voices of my parents and my grandparents, particularly one of my grandmas. And you know, I came by it honestly. I didn't just make that up. Like it came to me and through me. And so you know, sometimes I have to ask that supervisor who just really wants to make sure that I don't do that again, say, okay, I hear you, but what would a healthy one say to me, right? Because that's how I ended up navigating that really difficult boss for a number of years more before I didn't work for them anymore or with them anymore. It's what helps me navigate all the hard stuff. We are dealing with really daunting circumstances right now. Stuff is stacked up. And when we're not feeling motivated and our inner supervisor is yelling at us about that, a dear friend of mine, my integrity partner, having a really hard time with motivation, and her inner supervisor was doing that to her. I'm like, I really feel like if you just like let yourself have a minute, this to me just means you need a really big reset, because you're one of the most motivated, highly productive people that are compassionate and care about what we're doing around here. I do not believe you will be unmotivated forever, any more than I believe that the person that was scared to have the feeling because it wouldn't stop is really going to always be stuck in that feeling. It's going to ebb and flow. And when she started to hear us, her support section, try to encourage her, both me and her partner tried to encourage her that it wasn't forever. Then like the next day, her healthy inner supervisor had her doing all kinds of creative stuff. In fact, when I tried to call her, she was working late. So self-compassion is self-empathy. I'm going to do this really fast, but this is what empathy looks like. Empathy is not about fixing things for people. It's about showing up in a way that lets them know they're there for you and that you care what their experience is, right? First thing you have to do with empathy is stay out of judgment. And then you have to try to understand what's happening for them from inside of their social identities. You don't want to see it just from your place of privilege. You want to try to understand it from theirs, which maybe is in a target group. What's the person feeling? And then can you just demonstrate that you care that they're feeling what they're feeling? Okay. Self-judgment. So with self-empathy, you got to stay out of judging yourself. And so one of the habits, the tea that you brew, that judgment tea, you have to start noticing that for many of us, and maybe not you, but maybe you, that just sound like our president, maybe this, but maybe not. Like, you have to stay out of judging yourself. And you want to start to notice if you're a person with whom your first thought through is judgmental. And typically, if that's the way we've protected ourselves, the first thought, or motivated ourselves, then the first thought through is judgmental about us. It's probably also judgmental about situations and circumstances because we have a judgment habit. And so, it's hard to help yourself if you're judging yourself. They just don't go together. So, Megan, I think we have to maybe skip the second set of poll questions. It's going to take too long, and I must have talked too long about some 100 things. But so my point about these two poll questions that I was going to ask you is, we talk about fight, flight, freeze, which is just when our stress response goes off, our nervous system goes into a reaction that either just shuts down, freezes us, or whether we want to run away or we want to fight. It's the reptilian response. It's very old. It's from the back part of our brain. It takes over our whole system. And most people have heard of fight, flight, freeze or the stress response, and they kind of know what they mean. I think most of you would probably say significantly or somewhat say more. But on this other side, when I ask people if they've ever heard of tend, befriend response, what that means, most people tell me they've never heard of that. They don't know what it is. It's interesting. It's called the mammalian caregiving response, and it's feminine in orientation in that kind of way, which is kind of why we don't hear about it, because sexism will make that happen. But really, this is the idea that when our stress response goes off, our physiology is activated. What's really helpful is calming that down, physiologically quieting that down. And so the tend and befriend response, the research on it says that when I'm tending to somebody that's upset, they calm down, but I calm down too. And when somebody is tending to me, I calm down. And so if I'm willing to tend to myself, I get the benefit of being both the one tending and the one being tended to. And so the physiology calming aspect of that is dramatic. And when we recognize that we've made a mistake, dropped a ball, acted out of alignment with our values, that's where we want to go first. We want to go to tending, and I talk about self-soothing gestures, and this is one of mine that I'll do a lot. I'll maybe push right here, and I'll just like it's just kind of saying, I'm here, you're good, right? Some people will, hold their own hand, which is cool because sometimes other people don't let other people get close enough. So at least if you're going to hold your own hand, some people will, grab the back of their neck. So one woman I know just holds her hands open like this. What are the ways you might comfort yourself? One woman said that her daughter always grabs her ear, and so she started to do that too. So when she's really having a hard time and she's just wanting herself to, because she's physiologically jazzed, how do you comfort? The story I would tell about my son when he did something really not cool with himself and he was screaming at himself. I told him that I wanted him to pick up when the dog is startled by thunder, what do you do? He's like, I pick her up and I pet her. And I said, yep. And he said, Ma, you want me to pet myself? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, I kind of do, right? Because it's when we let ourselves come back to center. So that's a tip and a trick, is to actually soothe yourself back to center so that you can actually hold yourself lovingly accountable. I asked you guys to do the self-compassion, self-assessment. I always try to fit too much into these time frames that we have, but there's 3 elements of self-compassion. One is that you want to move towards self-kindness rather than self-judgment, which we just talked about. You want to move towards remembering that it's not just you, because when you think it's just you, like I'm the only one that ever made a mistake and left a client, then I tend to pathologize it and make it just about me and tell myself that I'm awful. When I say that's what happens to busy therapists sometimes, who are trying to wear too many hats and do too many things, and I'm just part of the great humanity that sometimes messes things up, then I give more space to myself. And the last one is that we want to be mindful of our emotions. We want to not ignore them or stuff them, but we also don't want to get swept away in them. And I like that. And Dr. Neff will offer this as I'll just close with this, that it's comforting language. If you put a self-soothing gesture, boy, I'm having a hard time right now. You know, we all make mistakes, especially with what we're all trying to deal with. Okay, what's the wisest thing I can do? Which takes us back to the comment. We may not navigate them all, but when you realize you haven't, you want to help yourself and then see what's the next best thing. And we'll stop there and take any questions, although I know it's 2:30. I'm sorry about that. I just looked up. It's right here and I still lost track of time. I'm willing to take a couple questions if anybody wants to ask something today. If not, you can chat your question, and there'll still be a follow-up response this week. We're going to do a follow-up response this week. You'll get the recording and a brief survey about this session, and some links to some resources. And then in a little while down the road, you'll get like a larger participant survey about this whole experience. And I would really, really greatly appreciate your feedback, particularly with that follow-up survey, so that your voices inform our effort to try to teach these skills. What we should do, if we should do things differently, all of your feedback would be important.
One question that's come in is, how can we hold space for empathy and also hold people accountable? i.e. empathy that people are scared during the pandemic, but holding them accountable for acting out of fear and promoting conspiracy theories and unsafe practices.
Wow, that's a really big question. I think that understanding where somebody's coming from, trying to see it through their perspective, maybe echoing that they're feeling fearful, that is coming from fear. You know, what you ultimately do about it, I think that's the thing that you have to acknowledge. You have to acknowledge that this person's fearful and they're making up conspiracy theories. And as a result of that, maybe their behavior is making them unsafe. Maybe it's making you unsafe. So you want your process to be about the 6 words, because at that point, it's not about them. And then as you're moving through the 6-word framework, you want to reflect on what matters most to you, where your boundary should be with this person. And then you want to resolve to take value-guided action related to that. And so maybe it's to say, you know, I understand that, you know, where this is coming from for you. And I understand that those are the choices that you're going to make. I want you to understand I'm going to make these other choices because of that. I don't know if that's an adequate answer to that very big question. I'll reflect on it a little bit more. But you can have empathy that someone's having a hard time and demonstrate care about that without agreeing with what they're doing. And I think that one thing I'd say about it is that, you know, it's sort of like empathy first and then, you know, the accountability to follow. And so it's the same thing I would say that I would want you to do for yourself is loving accountability, not judgmental accountability. Loving, clear. Brene Brown's mantra is one of her mantras is that she wants to have a strong back, which is to be very clear about her values and her boundaries, but a soft front and then a wild heart where like she's willing to like take risks and have difficult conversations with people across differences, to stand in your own truth and use your voice, and to do that in a way that's not blaming and shaming and judging other people, but has clarity. I think we'll end there. I'll tend to all the chat and all the other questions that we find, and you'll get that follow-up email. It's been an absolute pleasure and a very worthwhile challenge to be with you for these last 6 weeks. I think when we first decided 6 weeks, it was a little bit arbitrary, and we just wanted people to have a little bit of scaffolding, something to kind of look forward to or count on as we moved through this. Megan and I and all of us, we had no idea that we would still be on stay-at-home orders when these 6 weeks were up. But here we are, and I'm hopeful that what you're learning, like none of this will make what we're going through, magically simple, but hopefully it'll give you some navigational tools as you try to be who you are moving forward, right? I want you to be able to be who you are and rest in who you are and appreciate who you are as you try to navigate whatever is coming your way. I do want to say that even though you've been learning these skills, I want you to know that at times it just gets too big and too heavy, and we want you to be able to ask for help. So just remember that the Employee Assistance Program is here. Our counselors are, working, and some appointments are available. If you feel like you need to talk it out with somebody, we've got some high quality helpers here to do that with. No one should go it alone. We weren't meant to. So I wish you luck with whatever you're navigating. Know that we're here, and take very, very, very good care. Bye-bye.